All right, good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be joined by several members of this Providence City Council. In a moment, we're going to hear from Councilwoman Sue Anderbois, but we're also joined by Councilman John Goncalves, whose ward we're in here today, and Councilwoman Althea Graves. I'm also joined by the Director of the Providence Emergency Management, Clara DeSerbo, who we'll hear from in a second, and Deputy Director David Radcliffe, and the Director of Public Works, Patricia Coyne-Fay. I want to thank them all both for being here today and, more importantly, for everything they do both to serve our city and to keep our city safe in the case of PEMA and DPW. We have a beautiful morning here this morning, but it is also a time to get prepared for the start of hurricane season. We know the first major storm of the season is happening right now in the Caribbean, and so it's an opportunity for us to both update on good tips on how to be prepared for hurricane season, but also to remind folks about the thoughtful and proactive measures that the City of Providence has taken to help keep our city safe. So I'm going to open it up, and then Councilwoman Anderbois is going to share a few policy changes that we've made and thank her for her leadership. And then Director DeSerbo will talk about specific tips and other things that residents can do to be prepared for the season ahead. And so starting with some of the proactive measures that Providence has taken, preparedness and resiliency have been a priority of my administration and of this council. And we have been working hard to make sure that Providence residents are prepared and that their city government is helping protect them from the extreme weather. We have been treating severe rain and flooding in the city with the same urgency as we used to treat snow. We still take snow seriously, but as I've been saying, rain is the new snow, and the effects that we're starting to see of climate change are undeniable. In this part of the country, what we should prepare for in the future is more high heat days and more water, and that has certainly been our lived experience over the last year and a half of my time in office. Both extreme heat and flash flooding have been happening regularly, sometimes in the same week. Last year, for the first time, we had to close schools in September for high heat. We've often in the past had to close schools in June, but never in September. This past month, we opened our splash pads and water parks 2 weeks early because of high heat in the city. So we know that this is going to become the new norm. I'm happy to also see that the Director of Resiliency is joined us as well, Priscilla de la Cruz. Thank you. So as we work across departments to make sure that stormwater infrastructure is prepared, the folks at the Department of Public Works under Tricia's leadership are out regularly, both reacting to storm events as they did this weekend, and also proactively making improvements and upgrades to our sewer infrastructure. We know that we cannot build a sewer system big enough to capture every drop of water, but we do have meaningful investments taking place to repair decades of underinvestment in our sewer infrastructure. And this year, in my proposed budget with the support of the City Council, we have added an entire additional sewer crew so that we can continue to respond to the flooding that we've been seeing throughout our community and that we're expecting to see more frequently. Last year, we also launched a community electricity program that has turned out to be a great success in that it has both saved our residents money in their electricity bills, but also increased the percentage of renewable energy in their energy mix at their homes. So both making long-term investments in creating demand for renewables, but also saving our residents money. All of this has been done in partnership with the Providence City Council. They've been very supportive of our work to both increase investments in infrastructure, but also in programs like the Community Electricity Program. And then most notably, we've made multi-million-dollar investments in our hurricane barrier. What you see behind me, and more importantly, at least in terms of recent investments in the street gates, the Army Corps of Engineers actually maintains the hurricane barrier in the river, but it's the city's responsibility to maintain the street gates, both on Eddy Street and Allens Avenue, but also here on Bridge Street. And so after years of past due needed investment, We now have made $1.5 million investment in the street gates that are now nearly completed. Additionally, we have dredged canals in flood-prone areas. We are regularly clearing storm drains, and as I said, making meaningful investments in the sewer system itself. All of this is working towards our goal of having one of the best-run cities in the country. We regularly hear from constituents that they hear that the folks at 311 and the Mayor's Center for City Services are responsive to their calls for service. We both try to address the emergency as it's happening, and then after the storm passes, go out and do broader maintenance on the impacted areas. It has been a 24/7 operation the last year and a half, and our storm crew, DPW, PEMA, Providence Police, and Providence Fire are extraordinary professionals that have done a great job in taking care of our residents. All of these things are more short-term measures, both hard infrastructure, green and gray infrastructure, but Providence is also leading the way in terms of long-term policies. Long-term policies to be a leader in climate resiliency, to be a leader in decarbonization, and to be a leader in the jobs that are going to be created through all of this by being the first climate job city in the country. Much of that work has been led on the City Council by Councilwoman Sue Anderbois, who I'm happy to now introduce and thank her for her leadership, particularly on this issue. Councilwoman?
A little shorter. Hi everyone, I am Councilwoman Sue Anderbois. I am so grateful for the leadership of the Mayor and his team, as well as my colleagues here on the Providence City Council. And I'm also grateful to live in a city and represent a city where we understand that climate change is currently a serious threat and will only get worse. And we are doing what we need to do to address it today. Climate change is not a future problem. This isn't a problem for our kids and our grandkids. This is a problem for us right now, in addition to our kids and our grandkids. And we live in a city, as we know, that's on the coast and is bisected by rivers. And that water has been our strength for such a long time. We all love water fire. It's been the center of commerce. I love kayaking on the rivers that bisect the city. I love kayaking in the bay. It's also, as the Mayor mentioned, going to be one of our largest challenges going forward as we address climate change. And when we think about climate change, we really need to think about it on a continuum of actions. So it's both all we can do to mitigate our effects on climate change. So things like the 100% carbon neutral buildings ordinance that we passed unanimously on council and was signed by the Mayor recently, that will affect all of the school buildings being built as well as all municipal buildings in the city. So we're doing our part to reduce our emissions. The building energy reporting ordinance that we passed unanimously last year to require reporting of the energy use of buildings, as well as programs like, pardon me, the clean electricity program that the Mayor mentioned. And we're just getting started on the mitigation front. There's so much left to do, and I'm so excited to get to work with leaders like Priscilla De La Cruz, Director of Sustainability, and my colleagues on council, as well as the Climate Jobs Coalition and others, to get this work done in a way that respects workers and the environment and all of our residents. But being here near the hurricane barrier, I also just wanted to focus on water for a minute, as the Mayor already mentioned, and what we're doing to address the water issues. Not going to talk about noise today, but that'll be a different time. And thinking about what we can do as a city, again, in partnership across the different branches of government. I hear from residents all the time, and I'm sure my colleagues on council do as well, about the way that water and stormwater in particular is affecting our residents. We have folks who are flooding, who have never flooded before. We're seeing streets turn into rivers. That has never happened before. Last summer we saw the Jewish Alliance, the Jewish Community Center on Elm Grove, completely get flooded out in a not really even that intensive a storm for what came after it. So we're seeing more intense storms, water coming down more quickly and affecting more people. I had a neighbor recently on Elm Grove whose basement flooded for a week after a storm because the water was just coming up from the ground after the storm. So there's a lot we need to do as individuals and as city government. And I'm excited to have been working on, in partnership again with Director De La Cruz and Chief Dormady, on a partnership between the council and the mayor on their stormwater task force that's been led by Priscilla and Sheila to really address some of these issues head on. We're not going to fix this with more gray infrastructure. Our gray infrastructure is quite old. We do need to make improvements in that. That's great. We're never going to entirely fix it with more pipes. We need to be investing in more green infrastructure across the city, like the really amazing work that Parks is doing to increase kind of the sponginess of India Point Park, to work at the Stormwater Innovation Center down at Roger Williams Park, and other of those kind of like green infrastructure solutions to absorb more of this really intense water as it's coming in. And I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues on council, as well as colleagues in the mayoral administration, on the long-term policy and programs we can support together as we adapt to these unavoidable changes that are coming with a changing climate. There's also a lot we can do as a community to address climate change, and so I'm going to now turn it over to Director Clara DeCervo from PEMA, who's also Ward 3's finest, to talk a little bit about some emergency preparations that folks can be doing and what's happening across the city. But thank you so much for your efforts on this, and Clara.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's press conference. Thank you, Mayor Smiley and Councilor Anderbois, for your continued support and for being here today to help share important safety tips and precautionary steps the public can take to be prepared ahead of this hurricane season. It's critically important that our community and local businesses be informed about the resources available to them and the proactive steps that should be taken to prepare for severe weather, including high heat, flash flooding, and hurricanes. As Mayor Smiley and Councilor Anderbaugh mentioned, Providence is already experiencing the impacts of climate change. This has resulted in an increase in extreme weather events and is one of the reasons we are forecast for a particularly dangerous hurricane season this year. The Providence Emergency Management Agency is working collaboratively with Mayor Smiley and other city departments to be better prepared and protect our community for the rise of extreme weather events. And today we want to share important information with the public about how to be prepared for hurricanes, extreme heat, and flooding. As a coastal community, it's particularly important for our Providence neighbors and residents to know how to stay alert, informed, and prepared for the hurricane season. PEMA is constantly monitoring national weather trends and urges the public to be aware of the hurricane season that is forecast to be more dangerous than usual this year. Families should take time to create an emergency plan, know their evacuation routes, and learn what resources are available to them in the event that we are impacted by a hurricane or other major disaster. It is important to include your place of work, your children's school and daycare, and other locations you frequent during the week in your emergency plan. Businesses should have a continuity plan in case of disasters and should share evacuation route information proactively with their employees. One of the most important steps you can take to stay safe is signing up for emergency alerts. We encourage everyone, if you have not done so already, to sign up for Code Red and PVD 311 for the latest extreme weather alerts. Early notification and warning about hurricanes and other instances of extreme weather saves lives. Whether as a result of a storm surge or simply excessive heavy rainfall, Providence has experienced an increase in flooding and flash flooding incidents in recent years. We want to remind our neighbors of the importance of avoiding flood-prone areas during times of heavy rainfall. Never drive through flooded roads, and when possible, clear out the storm drains near your home to help avoid flooding on your street. When you receive a flood warning, seek shelter. It only takes a few inches of water to sweep a vehicle off the road, and it is critical to never ever drive through floodwaters. Much like preparing for a hurricane, your family should have a plan and sign up for emergency alerts to stay up to date on potential flooding incidents. The Providence Emergency Management Agency is constantly collecting all available data on flooding incidents in the city and conducting analysis on previous flooding events. We use that data to systematically coordinate between PEMA, the Department of Public Works, Police Department, and Fire Department to plan the city's strategy ahead of potential future events. In addition to flooding and hurricanes, we also need to be prepared for extreme heat. Extreme heat is responsible for the highest number of annual deaths among all weather-related hazards. It's important for our community to know what extreme heat is, to be able to recognize the signs of extreme heat illness, and proactively prepare for this kind of weather by learning what to do during these periods and what resources are available to you. Extreme heat is a period of high heat and humidity with temperatures above 90 degrees for at least 2 to 3 days. In extreme heat, your body works extremely hard to maintain a normal temperature which can, in some cases, especially for individuals with prior medical conditions, lead to death. It's important to identify places in your community where you can go to get cool, and in Providence, we activate cooling centers across the city to keep our community safe during extreme heat periods. Just 2 weeks ago, our city experienced a period of extreme heat for several days. High heat periods are particularly dangerous for our most vulnerable populations like young children and our elderly neighbors. In response to the extreme heat, FEMA collaborated across city departments to activate our cooling centers and open the city's splash pads and water parks 2 weeks early. In order to stay safe during periods of extreme heat, it's essential to remember a few tips. Do not rely on fans as your primary cooling device. Fans create airflow and a false sense of comfort, but do not actually reduce body temperature or prevent heat illness. During an extreme heat, it's important to drink plenty of fluids, avoid alcohol and sugary drinks, wear lightweight and loose-fitting clothing, and cover windows with drapes or shades. Please check in on our elders and vulnerable neighbors during warm weather. Twice a day is best if possible. If possible, install window air conditioners and insulate around them to maintain as cool a temperature indoors as possible. Never ever leave children or pets in a car for any amount of time, as the temperature can become fatally hot very quickly. Most importantly, be able to recognize the signs of heat illness, including extremely high body temperature, red, hot, and dry skin with no sweating, dizziness, confusion, or unconsciousness, and seek medical help immediately if you see or experience any of this. As the mayor has noted, this administration has been hyper-focused in its efforts to be prepared to our fullest for this hurricane season, and I'm proud of the steps that have been taken to ensure that the public has the information necessary to care for themselves and others in case of a hurricane or other extreme weather event. As part of our hurricane season preparations, I would like to make the public aware that we will be conducting the summer port siren test on Friday, July 5th at noon, and more information will be sent out through a press release prior to the test. This is part of our ongoing coordinated efforts to proactively protect our community from disasters and to ensure that our emergency alert and warning systems are functioning properly. I'm also excited to share that the 2024 Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan draft update is open for public comment and input until July 29th, a 30-day comment period. More information is available online and will be linked in our press release for today's press conference. Thank you for joining us, and please have a safe summer. Remember to check the FEMA and City of Providence websites and social media channels for real-time information when extreme weather occurs, to learn about cooling centers, resiliency hubs, and other resources available to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. DeCerbo. So again, the most important things that she just shared, if you're a Providence resident or business owner, please sign up for the PVD 311 app. That's where we push out notifications to let you know about extreme weather events and other emergency notifications. Sign up for Code Red. Similarly, PEMA will make emergency announcements via Code Red. And have a plan. Make a plan for your family, for your place of business, so that if the worst happens, you're prepared. And that's what we want everyone in Providence to do. At this time, I'm happy to take questions.
Mayor?
Yes.
On the other side of this barrier is South Providence and the Port of Providence, and it's not protected by the barrier. And it is also some of the most polluted land in the entirety of New England. In the event of a flood, that will be spread all over those neighborhoods and even perhaps downtown if the barrier in some way leaks through. So what is the plan to deal with the contamination that comes from flooding in the port?
The Providence Hurricane Barrier really protects downtown.
Yes.
There's actually quite a bit of the city that's not protected by the hurricane barrier. And it should do the job to protect downtown as a response to the 1954 hurricane. But we have plans in place that Clara can come up and share in just a second about any flooding that occurs elsewhere in the city. And so, as she mentioned, we will be testing the port siren this Friday. So when folks hear that, they should not be alarmed. That is only a test. and that's part of our emergency notification system that we want to make sure is working properly. But as for the city's flood mitigation plan, which I believe is open for public comment now, or that's a different plan. But if you want to come share any of the city's other flood plans, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yes. So the multi-hazard mitigation plan has a large section that talks about flood mitigation efforts in the Port of Providence. We recognize that the Port of Providence is completely unprotected by the hurricane barrier, as is South Providence. One of the major pieces of the multi-hazard mitigation plan is looking comprehensively at impacts to our most vulnerable populations, including neighborhoods outside the hurricane barrier, and also looking comprehensively not just at the flood risk, but also at the health impacts of pollution, of extreme heat, and taking a comprehensive look at the multiple factors that impact these vulnerable communities. Right now, yes, a hurricane would cause massive damage and cause pollution, but there's other hazards that they're dealing with every day already, including nuisance flooding, street flooding, and extreme heat days that are extremely dangerous as well. So we're really trying to look comprehensively across all of the hazards impacting those vulnerable communities.
And it does take into account then the contamination in the area?
Yeah, so it talks about the hazardous materials that are located in the Port of Providence. It's also important to note that the companies that are in the Port of Providence are required to abide by EPA standards and EPRA reports that include things like Tier 2 reporting about their hazardous materials. So they have to have plans in place and preparedness for things like flooding. It's something that we deal with the local emergency planning committee as well, and engage with the stakeholders in the Port of Providence around that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Well, the city of Providence is obviously engaged in some significant research planning. Ultimately, Providence is downriver, well, from an entire continent. What cooperation are you getting from other area cities, particularly the Blackstone River Woonsocket, which has had some recent serious issues with its waste disposal? Have you had conversations with them?
So we can talk a little bit about the collaboration across other municipalities in regards to flooding. So we work collaboratively with other local emergency management directors and agencies and the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency during periods of flooding. So we work in coordination with them around flooding issues.
Have they engaged in this type of planning or research?
So there's research that goes statewide, including we actually work with the National Weather Service looking at some of the flooding modeling that includes the entire Blackstone corridor.
Mayor, what is Code Red?
Is that an app?
Code Red is a emergency notification system. It is we get both text messages, emails, or phone calls. I don't believe is it an app? It's also an app. But it's the city's emergency notification system. Other municipalities use it as well. The state uses it as well. You sign in with your location, and then you get specific updates based upon your home address or your business's address.
And you think that's the best way for people to stay connected?
Again, we recommend both 311 and Code Red. Code Red is
you call, right?
well, so Code Red is specific to emergency notifications. The 311 notifications will include emergency notifications, but might also include reminders about parking bans in a snowstorm, or a trash delay because of a holiday, other city services notifications. 311 is an app, it is a phone number, and it is a website. And so the best thing to do, we recommend, is that folks download the app on their iPhone or Android, and then create an account for yourself, and then that will get you access to those notifications as well. Again, emergency and non-emergency city service updates.
In the App Store, is it under 311 or do you know?
PVD 311.
PVD?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the sewer team, so many people that is?
Oh, sure it is.
You want to come talk about the sewer team? We'd love to.
Hi. So the sewer team that we just thankfully received as part of the budget that was just signed is a separate crew. It should be about 3 or 4. As I stand here, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4. It's 3 or 4. And this will be a crew dedicated particularly to a lot of the proactive measures that our sewer team engages in. prior to weather, just as an ongoing measure in the city of Providence, clearing the catch basins and storm drains, making sure that when we do get those crazy weather events where we get a lot of rain in a short period of time, that they can prevent street flooding. And they know our sewer department, led by Superintendent David Mambro, do a fantastic job of protecting the city, and they know what the problem areas are, what those flood-prone areas are, and they always make sure in preparation of a weather event to staff those areas in particular to keep people safe.
With the level of flooding we've seen recently, small storms turning into flooded streets, and all this work in a bad hurricane season, what is the level of confidence kind of coming into this hurricane season that we are going to be able to mitigate a lot of this or protect against this?
We have a high degree of confidence that we're going to be able to keep folks safe and get back open and back to business with most weather events. We have made investments both in last year's budget, my first budget, and in this year's budget to continue to more fully staff the Department of Public Works. We are very grateful, and Providence residents should know that they're very lucky to have a robust emergency management agency that other municipalities don't have. And for better or for worse, we've gotten better because we've been through a lot already. And so that doesn't mean that we're going to be immune from chronic flooding and things like that, but we've gotten better and better at reacting to it. The thing that the best we can do is to properly prepare is for a major hurricane. And there's no level of staffing that would prepare us for a direct hit major hurricane. But we have good plans in place. We have talented leaders in departments that have practiced and prepared for that circumstance were it to occur. Of course, we hope that it doesn't. Earlier this year, just like we did last year, we do an all-hands-on-deck department director training for a mock hurricane drill to make sure that we all know who's supposed to do what and how we communicate with the public, how we respond. The PEMA crew is great at having us constantly drill for these things, and so I'm confident that we are as prepared as we can be. But we know, as Clara mentioned, that the National Weather Service has said that the forecasts are that this is going to be a more tumultuous hurricane season than in the past. We also know it's been a long time since Providence has seen a direct hit major hurricane, and so we act as if we need to be prepared as if it's happening this summer, and then hope that it doesn't. But we are taking all steps necessary to be as prepared as we can. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.